Russell Wilson is Mr. Unlimited, but are his days as the Giants QB1 limited if the Giants offense doesn't get going this week? John Michael Schmitz fired back at some of the more of the same comments about this team, and Paulson Adebo breaks down his prep for CeeDee Lambs and George Pickens. Man, do we have a lot to talk about today in Blue Rush. What's going on, everybody? This is your Blue Rush pregame show. The Giants are going down to Dallas week 2. That needs no hype. They haven't beaten the Cowboys the last 8 times. There's a lot riding on this game for a lot of people and players as well. So let's bring in Paul Schwartz, our longtime beat writer for the Post. Paul, we felt the energy yesterday throughout practice and in the locker room. We've heard the phrase more of the same to describe the Giants' week 1 performance. Big opportunity for them to go down to Dallas and change the narrative about themselves and do what hasn't been done in a long time, and that's beat the Cowboys. What's going on, my man? How you feeling?
I have some guarantees for you. I will perform well in Dallas this weekend. I guarantee you I will get some good barbecue to eat. Okay.
Okay.
Other than that, I have no guarantees for you about how the Giants are going to play. We know last week was unacceptable pretty much on every level, mostly offensively, but pretty much on every level it was unacceptable. And if they play that way again, they will lose, and they will lose badly. So we'll talk about it, but there's nobody to blame but themselves, and the only ones who can get out of it is the Giants themselves.
Absolutely. They can rewrite or begin to rewrite the narrative about this team, just about the franchise as a whole, man. You've seen these guys have become the NFL's punching bag. You watch shows like Get Up, CBS Sports. Everybody has just jumped down the Giants' throat, and it's kind of like a continuity from a continuing thing from last season. You know, when you put that type of performance out there on tape week 1. The Giants haven't beat Dak Prescott in a long time, Paul. I think it was 2016 was the last time they beat Dak Prescott. I have a video for you here. This is what the Giants' offense looked like in 2016, the last time they beat Dak. Check this out.
Look at the New York offense.
Eli Manning, Ole Miss.
Rashad Jennings, Liberty University. Odell Beckham Jr., LSU.
Sterling Shepard, Oklahoma.
Victor Cruz, Massachusetts.
Will Tide, Stony Brook.
Eric Flowers, all about the U. Marshall Newhouse, TCU.
Weston Richburg, Colorado State.
John Jerry, Ole Miss.
Bobby Hart, Florida State.
Initial reactions watching that, Paul.
How did they win? How did they win? Look, I mean, they had, Victor Cruz, Odell Beckham Jr., and Sterling Shepard, pretty good.
Yep.
Eli Manning was, still 3 years away from getting benched and ending his Giants career. He was still fairly effective. It's been 13 straight games that they've lost to Dak Prescott, I always find it mystifying when I hear the talk around the league of Dak's not this, Dak's not that. And I'm thinking to myself, Dak's all that and all this because every time I see him play live, it's against the Giants and he's playing well and the Cowboys are winning. So the Giants have to inflict some of that misery that other teams have inflicted on Dak and the Cowboys on them because they certainly haven't for a long time. I'm trying to think what my picture and my, Paul Schwartz, New York Post in 2016, what I would have looked and sounded like. Maybe a few less gray hairs, but otherwise about the same, I guess. Yeah.
And I would have had a little bit more of a hairline then, it just feels like forever, Paul. It feels like this is a game that, with so much hype and expectation going into the season for them to kind of, that air to kind of deflate out of that hype balloon. This is a game that I feel like could count as 2 wins. Almost, if you could go down there to Dallas and do what hasn't been done in forever. When I'm watching that video, though, and like you kind of looked at it and you're like, with that team, with that offense, I look at that offensive line, who Weston Richburg, Eric Flowers, Marshall Newhouse. You fast forward to this Giants offensive line. Which offensive line would you take down to Dallas this week before we start talking about the O-line versus Cowboys D-line?
Well, at this point, I probably would have taken that one from 2016, just because the one I saw last week, I know we're not harping on last week's game in Washington, but the offensive line I saw last week just, did not get it done in pass blocking and run blocking in anything. And I don't think they can just say, we just have to get Andrew Thomas back. We'll just, and the front office has said a little bit of that too. The first 6 games last year, I kind of like what we saw when Andrew Thomas was in there. And then when he got out, everything went to hell. Well, you can't have one player dictate your whole position group, even as good a player as Andrew Thomas. I think there's a chance he plays this week. We'll see, later in this week, Thursday and Friday, if he's able to practice and how well he's able to practice. He ran on Wednesday. But even if he comes back, you can't say, okay, he's back. Everything's fine and dandy now. The other 4 starters are back from last year. So you can't get that, we don't have continuity thing. There's continuity. These guys know each other. It's the same offensive line coach. And, they need to have much more urgency and aggression and just want to than they did last week, because it was alarming how they played last week.
Yeah, and I think a lot of eyes are going to be on the interior. I spoke with John Michael Schmitz in the locker room, but we'll throw to him in a little bit. And then Van Roten and then John Runyon. I think a lot of that pressure is going to fall on them, because like you said, there's no Andrew Thomas. That's that one player. James Hudson, you're going to have to give him help. You're going to have to, chip block. They're going to have to work to that left side. They're going to have that continuity and communication is going to have to be there, because the Commanders were beating them with simple TE stunts, tackle, and that's going to – you can't have that, because the easiest way to affect a quarterback is getting pressure within his face. Now, when you look at who they're going up against with Kenny Clark, former Pro Bowler, that's the guy they traded for with the Michael Parsons trade, Osa Odighizuwa, who they move around throughout that interior. They had both of those 2 guys had pretty solid games against the Eagles, who, they ran the ball effectively. You have Saquon Barkley back there, but it all starts in that interior. And I don't understand why why they didn't look as solid and as sharp as they were supposed to in that first game against simple stuff, and now they've got a bullseye on their back now. You look on Instagram, and there's a whole running joke on Instagram where the Giants have signed the comedian Drewski to be on their offensive line now. Like, if I'm in that offensive line room, I'm tired of being the butt of the jokes. If I'm one of those 4 guys you mentioned, I'm tired of people saying that, hey, we are not effective unless we have Andrew Thomas, unless we have our anchor on this offensive line. So I think a lot of this game, whether you're on the defensive side of the ball, offensive side of the ball, like a lot of this game in terms of a player and their production, their success is going to fall on how well the offensive line can protect Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart, you, Paul, if they throw you back there. Doesn't matter who they throw back there. They have to be protected.
Well, in the past, the Cowboys have really bothered the Giants up front with their quickness, right? They weren't always the biggest defensive line. DeMarcus Lawrence, right? Remember, who's not there anymore. Micah Parsons. We need. Micah Parsons was the identity of that Dallas front line. I'm sure, I have not done this yet, but I'm sure if I asked all the Giants offensive linemen, would you rather face the Cowboys with Micah Parsons or without him? They will say without him. You know what I mean? So those disruptors are not there. Yes, Kenny Clark is a good run stopper. There's no question. But this is not, just like last week against the Commanders, these are not 2 of the better high-profile defensive lines in the league. So you need to get something done against these guys. When they play against the monsters, the best defensive lines in the league, then, okay, you may have to struggle. You may have to try to figure out something else. But against the Cowboys, we heard all offseason with Micah Parsons before they traded him, can they stop the run? Have they done enough to stop the run? That was a big problem last year. Okay, Kenny Clark you want to say he's a better run stopper than Micah Parsons? Fine. But there's no general manager or coach in the league who would say, I'd rather have Kenny Clark than Micah Parsons. So this is a defensive line that is without its biggest weapon, its most versatile weapon. DeMarcus Lawrence, who killed the Giants, is not there anymore. So it should be a game where the Giants do not get dominated like they were last week. You need to run the ball against the Cowboys. And, you mentioned that we'll talk about it in the next, block or whatever when we talk about what the Giants have to do offensively, because I have some thoughts about how the Eagles did against the Cowboys as well.
In terms of on defense, the Eagles offense versus Cowboys defense?
Yeah. I mean, I just don't think it was, Saquon Barkley ran for 60 yards. He averaged 3.5 yards, less than 3.5 yards a carry. Jalen Hurts was effective, but he killed them with runs and scoring runs, but he didn't kill them with long runs. The Eagles did not do anything special. I mean, they scored 3 points in the second half.
Yep.
So the Cowboys, manned up after giving up 21 points in the first half and played much better. So the Giants can't expect to go in there and just run the ball at will, but you can't have Tyrone Tracy and Motor Singletary and Cam Scatterbo have 30 total yards rushing. I mean, like I said, they can have Eli in his prime or Kurt Warner or Phil Simms or Jeff Hostetler or anybody back there, and they're not going to succeed very much if you can't literally run the ball, an inch or two.
And that was the deflating part about it all, because I mean, it's one thing to struggle in pass protection, Paul. We've seen that. That muddies the water in terms of being able to evaluate your quarterback, and we'll go a little bit deeper into that. But when you can't run the football, I think that's what a lot of talking heads and the analysts who are like, oh, get Russell Wilson out of there, he's done, he can't. If you have zero help in the sense of, hey, we can't run the ball on this first down and get 6 to 7 yards to stay ahead of the chains. Every time we're in some sort of second down or third down after running the football, we are backed up and behind the chains. What the Commanders ended up doing was rushing 4 and dropping 7, playing 2 high safeties over the top. Well, if those who broke down the Cowboys-Eagles game, Matt Eberflus played zone 100% of the snaps, and it's a copycat NFL. If you watch one team being able to get after and cause havoc by rushing 4 and dropping 7, then the next team is going to do the exact thing. And that leads us into can Russ cook? That's what you put in as a topic to talk about. Can Russ cook? Russ, we can't evaluate this entire Russ, Jameis Winston, Jackson Dart. You can't evaluate who's back there because you have 1, 0 time to throw the football. 2, you have no run game to help you. So if I'm Russell Wilson, and you saw when he spoke to the media, Russ is still with the positive energy, and, he was like, I never flinch or I never back down. Russ, when you have a chance to cook, you're going to have to cook. But it's like, Paul, you get in late from one of these games, you're hungry. You don't have time to cook a long home cooked meal. You got to throw something in the microwave and make it be delicious. That's what Russell Wilson is going to have to do early, because I feel like if this offense doesn't have at least 10 to 14 points in that first half and it's not a close game, that's when we see a switch being made. So Russ has to have time to cook, but at the same time, Paul, you can't have 5 different aisles, the stove on, the oven on. You can't even use the air fryer. He's going to have to go to the microwave and salt base something and make the offense, I don't want to say great again, but put points on the board, because Dak and those guys are going to try at least.
Well, can Russ cook the way he did with Seattle in his heyday? No, he cannot. I mean, I don't think anyone's looking for that. I mean, they'd be great if you could see it, but that's not Russell Wilson at age 36 in his 14th NFL season. But what does Russell Wilson do well? He does really well in play action, right? Play action, you have to respect the deep ball he can throw. So, there was no ability to have any play action passing in Washington because there was no play. There was no running game. Mm-hmm. So they didn't have to respect it or honor it at all. So that's an issue. The dropbacks, what did Russ have? 37 passes. I think there was almost 45 dropbacks. I mean, that's too much. That's putting too much on Russ's plate. he didn't play well. I mean, I don't think he played well, but I don't think he had any help. And about a quarterback switch. Look, if things are going haywire up front, I don't think Brian Daboll is going to say, Jackson, you fix it if Andrew Thomas is not in there and they're not blocking for anybody. You know what I mean? Because they have a lot of regard for what Jackson Dart might be able to do, but I don't think they think he's a miracle worker, and I don't think they want to get him killed. That makes no sense either. So they have to run the ball in some semblance, and this is a defense where you should be able to do some things. We're going to break down the Cowboys defense, right? Their starting cornerback, Deron Bland, it just came out that he's got an injury and he's not going to play. So now you have Trevon Diggs as their top cornerback, and you're going to be facing backup cornerback in the game. So can Darius Slayton get something done in that? Can Wan'Dale Robinson get something done better in that? Do they have to double Malik Neighbors? And if they do, are they going to just let Diggs deal with Malik? And if they do that, there should be openings against backup players with Darius Slayton. That's what has to happen here. This was a big break that the Giants got, that Bland is not going to be able to play. Now, to use the name, can the Giants offense not be so predictable and so bland and do something about it?
I like what you did there. And yeah, and it's like when you look at that, when you initially saw that he was down, my initial response was like, okay, all right, they'll be able to throw at a corner. But then I had to take it back a little bit because, again, if you're able to just rush 4 and drop 7, that backup or backup's backup out there at corner, he's going to have help over the top. You're never going to put that corner in any sort of sticky situation if he's able to just drop back, keep his eyes on the quarterback, and jump whatever route he wants to jump, because he sees that offensive line or that pass protection is collapsing, and now he can get up on a route or jump a route because he doesn't have to worry about a deep ball or anything being thrown over the top. So it's one of there's no evaluation of Malik Neighbors. There's no evaluation of Darius Slayton. Any of these guys, Tyrone Tracy Jr., any of these guys, if the offensive line does not go and have themselves a solid to an elite game, there's just nothing you can do. And it's unfortunate that we're in this situation to where it's like, oh my gosh, like, are these dudes, like, what are we expecting going into this game? Like, you kind of have to manage your expectations going into the game and like hope for the best, but then you have to prepare yourself for the worst as well. So it's Deron Bland being out. It'll be great for some one-on-one situations, but you got to earn the right. Just like we say, you got to earn the right to rush. You got to earn the right to have one-on-one situations when it comes to Malik Neighbors or any of these Giants receivers. Final thought on the offense, Paul, before we throw to John Michael Schmitz and hear from the Giants offensive line.
Well, we made a lot of put a lot of words in, made a big deal of Mike Kafka calling the plays again, right? Sideline. What did it say to you? Okay, he's a guy who played offense, right? That when they get down on the goal line, their first play is a tackle-eligible pass to Marcus Bowe. Okay, now number one, that play should be opened. It wasn't even close to being opened. You know what I mean? Marcus Bowe, they rushed through the ball, I guess, out of the end zone to Marcus Bowe, who was covered. So first of all, why did the Cowboys know that was going to be the call? Why did they have no problem defending it? And why was it called in the first place? I mean, did Mike Kafka look at what was going on and say, I don't trust Cam Scatterbo or Tyrone Tracy to gain a yard? I also am not really into having Cam Scatterbo on the field in those situations and not Tyrone Tracy. Since when can Tyrone Tracy not be a third down back? You can throw the ball to him. He's bigger than Cam Scatterbo. He's bulkier. He's not heavier, I guess, because Scatterbo's got some weight to him. How about not overthink it and hand the ball to Tyrone Tracy and see if he can get a yard and a half? So, I didn't like that play. Now, that's not really Monday morning quarterback. Those plays have to work that completely fooled, right? And then if Marcus Bowe drops the ball, then it's on him. Then, okay, that was a bad call because, in practice, I don't know if he caught it or not. But that has to be one of those things where, you have the third tight end, all of a sudden he's wide open, he catches the ball, tackle eligible, he comes in, he's standing there alone, you lob the ball up to him and he catches it with two hands and you have a touchdown. That was an alarming call. It was alarming why they had to make that call, and it was alarming that it didn't fool anybody. So, even the coaches, everyone's got to pick it up here.
And I believe when they came off the field, they kicked that 3 points. That was when the cameras caught Malik Neighbors and Brian Dable kind of having their little moment. But again, we're watching at home, or we're watching at the bars, or you're watching in the press box, and we're like, you guys had, 8 plays from and goal to score. If you're the player, a guy like Malik Neighbors, remember, you unretired the number 1 for me. I've went through all of training camp and preseason and completely dominated. How did I not get a target there? So that's going to breed that frustration into the player as well. Again, if it hits, you're just happy, hey, we scored on the opening drive. We're going to have some sort of momentum. The ball's going to come back to me. But when it doesn't hit, you're sitting there and you have the NBF, whatever you call it, NBF, natural face, because you're like, because
you can say it. You can say it.
Natural bitch face, absolutely, because we're talking about Malik Neighbors here. He has to get his targets. It's like you have to feed this kid, because all throughout we see it. Who's the biggest playmaker on this team? One of the biggest playmakers in the division, Malik Neighbors. Anytime that he is let loose and we're able to watch him just go out there and perform at a high level, the Giants offense is clicking on some sort of cylinders, So those type of play calls, I get it. I get why they wanted to do it. I think it was a little bit too early, but at the end of the day, it's football. Like my dad has Daryl Blackstock on my dad's staff. He goes, it's either run or pass. It's that simple. Don't overcomplicate it.
And Brandon, one other thing I just want to say that I was on Dallas radio, this week, and I always go on with them before the Cowboys game, and they asked me, well, what is it with Daboll and Neighbors? Is it alarming what's going on with them? Is that an attitude problem and this and that? And I'm like, Malik Neighbors is not the Giants' problem.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Him being fiery on the sideline. He's feisty. Yeah, would it be more quote unquote professional if he just, yeah, I get it. Go sit down. I've seen almost all these players, Tiki Barber, Amani Toomer, they got Plaxico Burress, certainly, they get feisty on the sideline, right?
Yeah.
He's not the problem. Like I said, he wants it, and he's selfish. Yeah, he's selfish. He wants to score touchdowns and make catches and win games. He knows, he had 12 targets and 5 catches. It's not good. That's not acceptable. So, he's not the problem. I mean, yes, we write about it and we talk about it. Because the TV cameras catch it. Oh, they exchanged some words on the sideline. Yeah, they did. They did good. Everyone has, I'd like to see the offensive linemen have that fire. Yep. I'd like to see someone go, Russell Wilson or one of those guys go to the offensive lineman and said, guys, get your heads out of you know what. Let's go here.
Yep.
I mean, they were awful. So too much passion is not the Giants' problem right now. I guarantee you that.
And I love the maturation that he's shown in terms of Malik Neighbors with the accountability. Because had he just gone on and just had whatever he was saying to us, the media, and all, had he just said the NBF and all that would have just meant like, oh, you're kind of deflecting it a little bit. But he did take the ownership of saying, hey, I had 5 catches on 12 targets. He knows how great he wants to be. That is, like he says, disgusting watching that tape. So I'm glad of that accountability that Malik Neighbors took there. That's showing that he's being a leader to this team. And when you talk about he's not the problem, everyone has identified the Giants' offensive line as a problem. And we talked about the O-line versus the Cowboys' D-line from our perspective, but I needed to hear it from one of the offensive linemen's perspectives. I went in the locker room and I spoke with center John Michael Schmitz. Here's our conversation in this episode of London in the Locker Room. All right, it's time for your Week 2 London in the Locker Room with center John Michael Schmitz. JMS is in the building. All right, man, just kind of talk to me about, that first game after you guys have sat, watched the tape, flushed it. What's your mindset going into Week 2, going down to Dallas?
Yeah, I mean, we disappointed and lost. I mean, we know we got to do better on the offensive line, and it's plain and simple. We got to take charge and own up. We watch the tape. We got to do better in the run game. We got to get that started, and and we will. And we will collectively. There's like one thing here and there that everyone kind of felt like they could have done better, and we watched the film, and yeah.
Collectively, when you talk about that one or two things that everyone, because we always feel like that. Like even back when I was a player, when you watch the tape, it's never as good, and you watch the tape, it's never as bad. So, kind of, you're talking about the how you guys can kind of collectively come together and do better week 2. What are some things, like detailing you guys' work, what are some things you feel as though you guys can get better at?
Yeah, I would, like you said, like focusing on our details and execution of the play. The little things matter, and it goes a long way and can turn a 2-yard run into an explosive run that has a chance to score. So just minor little details, focusing a little bit better, and yeah.
When you go on social media and you see talking heads talking about more of the same old Giants, like when you see that, what are you automatically thinking?
Yeah, I don't pay attention to the outside noise, and as a team, we don't either. We know what we have in here, and we have a great team, and we'll put our foot forward and onto the Cowboys.
Dallas, strong in the inside. They just traded for the D tackle from the Packers, Clark, forget his first name. Just what type of opportunities are there for you guys to really get the run game going and kind of shore up that pass protection in the middle?
Yeah, I mean, like they're a really good D-line, and we know that. We gotta like I said before, we gotta be on our details. We gotta come out, be physical, and put our next foot forward. We gotta have a good game.
Lastly, to lighten it up a little bit, man, both of our shoulders are tense right now. Talk to me about the stash.
Yeah, it's just something new, something that I talked to my wife about. Like, hey, I think I'm gonna. Well, I can't grow a beard at all.
Okay.
So it was only a stash.
Okay.
I can't do that. It's a little shot. It's a little yeah. So
you gonna stay with it the entire season or what?
Yeah. We're gonna stick with it. So.
All right. JMS. The S stands for stash. Appreciate you hanging out with me, man.
Appreciate it.
All right, week 1, Paul. You could tell, like, I'm not saying he's dancing around the questions. Obviously, he's not gonna give us the game plan, but you can tell that he's been on this offensive line for a while, and he is tired of answering questions about the offensive line's mishaps. And this is the week. If they're going to show up, if they want to silence all the noise, this is the week for JMS, all those guys, go down to Dallas and move some bodies, move some guys off the spot. So, man, what do you think of what he said, Paul?
Well, look, Brandon, I'm not critiquing your question, okay? But how about this? How about if one game you're able to ask John Michael Schmitz, okay? John Michael, in the second quarter, I believe it was the third play, Tyrone Tracy had that 28-yard run that he split the two guys and he ran in for a touchdown. It looked like you had a key block there. Can you explain that to me? Can you break that down for me? He'll probably break it down for you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, we talked about Malik Neighbors earlier, right? If you say, Malik, it was your first, no. It was your second touchdown. On your second touch, I got them confused. On your second touchdown, they were both in the left corner, but on the second one, it looked like you did a double move. I think Malik's going to not have a bitch face, right? I think he's going to say, on that second one, that wasn't really a double move. That was like a hitch and go. And we never get to ask these guys this thing. You know, it's been more than a decade pretty much of asking Giants players, offensive linemen, fill in the blank, what happened with the run game? You know, why were you guys not able to establish a run game? The quarterback, did you feel like your pocket was sound? On defense, did you feel kind of helpless that you weren't able to stop the run and you couldn't get them off balance? I mean, these are the questions you ask. So these guys have been beaten down and beaten down. Malik Neighbors only for one season and one game. Some other guys longer. So, you know, John Michael Schmitz for a few years now. So, you know, let's see, you know, people call players selfish. Let's see a guy when his team is winning. If he acts selfish, then he's selfish. You know what I mean? Then he's selfish. You know, we won the game, but I didn't get my touches. That's selfish. If you lose and lose and lose, I think it's just human nature to kind of crawl into a shell, to not answer your question great, because there aren't any answers and you're just beaten down. So I think there's a generation of Giants players now who I've talked to whose careers have come and gone, and it's been a lot of losing. And that's, I mean, think of, like, I talked to a guy like Daniel Bellinger. He's a terrific guy to talk to. 80% of the times I go to him after a game or on a Wednesday or a Thursday, it's about, what do you guys need to do better? Instead of, how do you maintain this? Are you worried about a letdown? I remember years and years, I would be asking Giants players, look, you won 3 in a row, and now you got the last place team coming in. Are you worried about a letdown? I'm not asking a lot of guys about letdowns in the last several years.
Again, this is a game where you can change the narrative. Like, I don't even say change the narrative. You can redirect the narrative. And you're talking about the guys being used to losing and losing week in, week out. They're used to losing to Dak Prescott as well. Again, this could be – there's so much riding on this game, Paul, I feel like. And there's no need for locker room or billboard material or anything. This guy on the screen – Dak Prescott has owned the New York Football Giants since he came in from Mississippi State. This will be a great game for the pass rush, for the defense, for Shane Bowen, just this Giant nations as a whole to beat Dak Prescott. Paul, when's it like do you remember that 2016 game where they beat Dak Prescott?
Well, he was a rookie, and they beat him twice. He was a rookie. Yeah, what draft pick was he? What round was he?
4th round pick.
Yeah, I mean, so it was a surprise that he won the job. So nobody knew he was going to be a good player, and they beat him twice. Okay, the Cowboys weren't good, so the Giants beat him, and that's pretty much the last we heard of. The last time the Giants won a game against the Cowboys, Dak was hurt, right? I think they beat Cooper Rush. I think I think Cooper Rush beat him once. I think the Giants beat him. I think that's who it was. Maybe it was a different quarterback, but. He's a good player. He got a ton of money, but around the league, people have issues with him because he doesn't always play his best when under duress. He's never under duress with the Giants, or rarely under duress. He's just free-flowing, scoring touchdowns. He's leading the game. There's no sense that the Giants offense can match him score for score most of the time. So, we have to see, they don't have Emmitt Smith there anymore. They don't have Ezekiel Elliott anymore, right? They have an okay running game. And CeeDee Lamb last game, they might have won the game if CeeDee Lamb held on to the ball. He had 3 drops, right? He had, 13 targets and 7 catches for 110 yards. So he was more productive than Malik Neighbors was last week, a lot more productive. But he had 3 drops that were very costly. And, I asked Drew Phillips about that. CeeDee Lamb, I think he lines up about half the time in the slot, doesn't he, Brandon?
Yep.
He lines up in the slot a lot.
Yes, he does.
So we can talk about Adebo, CeeDee Lamb, and there will be that matchup, but CeeDee Lamb will line up in the slot, and Adebo's not going into the slot to go against him. That's going to be Drew Phillips. I talked to Drew Phillips about it, and I said, I posed the question to him. You'll like this because you're a former receiver. So I said, when you watch the tape of a guy who just came off a game where he dropped 3 passes on national TV, and everyone's talking about it, and CeeDee Lamb said, I got to do better. That was not good enough. Do you say, that's great, I'm going against the guy who's got the dropsies, or do you say, I'm going against a good player who's got it in his head about the drops, and he's going to be, loaded up to not drop the ball? And he said, well, probably the second one. Probably the second one. You figure he's been abused by dropping a ball. And, I said, what do you think of that? He said, well, it would be great if I could go into games and hope and pray that, and it will happen that receivers drop the ball, but I can't count on that. It doesn't really matter. And he said, he's a heck of a matchup for me. So that's another one. I thought Drew Phillips played okay. He played more than okay. I think he played pretty solidly in Washington. Now he's got to do that. And, he's a second year. The Giants think very highly of him as a slot corner. Let's go, right? You got Adebo on the outside. They think he can do some things with him. You got Drew Phillips on the inside. Maybe they can contain CeeDee Lamb, make him drop the ball once or twice, and take away their best weapon.
Yeah, you're going to have to double him, especially when he's in the slot. Hey, I love Drew Phillips. I love the ascension that he's in his NFL career, but we're talking about CeeDee Lamb here. And remember last year at home, CeeDee Lamb he was quiet for a little bit, and then he and Tay Banks started jawing, and then came the 55-yard touchdown where he got the 15-yard penalty because he absolutely disrespected Tay Banks after that. Here's a guy that, he had the drops. It's almost like you want him to have some success early and then the drops late, not the drops early, and then he get upset with himself or someone says something to him and then he just turns his game on and becomes alive. I think if I'm Shane Bowen, I think Madden defensive coordinator, I line Paulson Adebo up one-on-one with George Pickens on the outside, and I'm doubling CeeDee Lamb in the slot, and then Cor'Dale Flott, Tay Banks, whoever you have on that outside, you're gonna have to win that matchup as well, because Dak Prescott does a great job of just distributing the ball to different guys. And when he understands that, yes, I have a CeeDee Lamb and a George Pickens, two guys that I have to target a lot. But on the flip side of that, he understands how much attention those two guys are going to get. It's almost like if you're a third receiver, a third option, a Jake Ferguson, or whoever that third receiver is on the Cowboys offense, you're still going to get your touches, and you're still going to have a third down or maybe a fourth and something to where he could target you with the football as well. You got to be on your A game. So when it comes to stopping this Cowboys passing game, the Giants have their hands full, and we talk about, they have Malik Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau, Brian Burns. Those three guys only played 8 snaps together, Paul, and a lot of people are upset with Shane Bowen. Oh, he should be fired out. How do you only have those guys on the field 8 times? They couldn't stop the run. What's the point of having the NASCAR package on the field if you're not stopping the run? The 7th-round draft pick wide receiver, I forget his name, the hyphenated name, 15 carries, 80-something yards. Again, Brian Burns, we said it. We've said it all throughout since last year, Paul. You got to earn the right to rush, or you got to earn the right to have that NASCAR package out there on the field. Now, I think Abdul Carter should be on the field more. If there's 70 snaps, he should be on the field more than 38. And I think with Micah McFadden going down, maybe he's able to, that position now is interchangeable with him and Darius Musa, who will more than likely get the start. But we want to get, and I've said it, you want to get the best out of that big 3 pass rush. You got to score points on offense so you're not down in the 4th quarter, and you got to stop the run. It's the only way we're going to see those 3 guys, Paul.
Yeah, look, when it's funny when they drafted Abdul Carter, some fans' reaction was, okay, we're trading Kayvon. Well, okay, you're not trading Kayvon because you picked up his 5th-year option. He's a good player, and he's relatively inexpensive this year. And if he's a good player, he's relatively inexpensive next year on the final year of his contract. But there is, and that was, I asked Shane Bowen about this last week, and it's been a point of discussion. You have 3 players who pretty much play the same position. So what do you do now? We know that Abdul Carter played inside his first 2 years at Penn State, so he can do that. I agree with you. I think he will get more snaps as kind of like the will linebacker. I think you will see him doing that. Now, they didn't draft him to be a will linebacker, to be an inside, off the ball linebacker. They drafted him to be on the line and go get the quarterback and line up outside. But he looked good rushing the passer from inside. So yes, they picked up guys, Roy Robertson Harris, Chauncey Golston, to help them stop the run, and it did not work in the first game. I think it's very difficult to stop the Commanders the way they run the ball. So I think this will be a more honest, even test to see. I mean, if the Cowboys run all over the Giants, then we got a big problem. The Giants have a big problem if that's going to be the case. Yes, it's easy for me to say, and I did, and I wrote it, get Carter on the field more. I do believe that. He's got to play more than half the snaps. But I'm not a defensive coordinator, so I understand if you're not stopping the run, do you take off a guy who's supposed to be a better run defender? Now, I think Abdul Carter is a good run stopper.
Yeah.
He had 23.5 tackles for loss last year at Penn State, led the nation. So he can stop the run, and I think if you get him in that mindset that, look, we're going to need you to do more of this because that's the way it's going to be right now until we prove we can do it. We're going to have Burns and Kayvon at the edges, and you're going to be, a run stopper. And, on 3rd down, you can go get the passer as well. I think he's more than a good enough player to do that. They kind of have to unleash him a little bit. And yeah, I mean, look, it's nothing crazy here. The Giants couldn't run. They couldn't stop the run last week, and they got blown away.
Whew, yeah, if I'm Shane Bowen, this has to be his coming out game, I feel like, because he's catching a lot of heat, obviously, for the Abdul Carter thing, not playing him as much as we think he should have played. But if you got an opportunity to go up against Dak Prescott and kind of shut him down, or shut that Cowboys offense down, or just contain them. No one thinks it's hard to shut an offense down in the NFL. If you can contain this Cowboys offense, and then you allow that big three to get after it, and then Dexter Lawrence, didn't hear his name called much, but now his wife is giving birth to his first child. That lights a little flame underneath you right there as well, Paul. So
hey, practice matters, right? Practice matters. Dexter Lawrence was, rightly so, he's coming off a dislocated elbow. He was limited in a lot of practice. He didn't play in any preseason game. It matters. I mean, I'm not surprised he started off slowly, Dexter Lawrence. But that start is behind him now. Now he's got to be the best nose tackle in the league starting week 2, because week 1 was kind of a wash for him. Yeah, he looked like, when you don't do something, you get rusty. He looked rusty. That's no question about it.
Yeah, can't wait to see him back and, cause havoc in that middle. And real quick, real shout out to special teams coordinator Michael Gabriel. Gobes used Abdul Carter to come off that edge and block that punt. Just think, if they had the momentum, Paul, the way football works, if you had the momentum on your side, that punt lands on the Commander's side of the football field, of the line of scrimmage, and maybe you even get a scoop and score. Instead, since it was just one of those days, ends up being a 31-yard punt, which, that's just unfortunate. But I think that there's something there with putting him on that punt block unit, because now you can open something up on the other side, because guys are going to have to slide and identify where Abdul Carter is. So if you're not using him as much on the defensive side of the football, having him impact plays on special teams, or at least that special team, that was huge. Shout out to Gobes for that one. We kind of talked about CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens and just this overall Cowboys passing game. Paulson Adebo in his first real game as a Giant kind of held his own against Terry McLaurin. So now he gets a chance to go up against CeeDee and Pickens. He's ready for whatever or whoever, and I caught up with him in the locker room. You got your first official game, rock and blue. I think you guys were in orange. I don't even remember. I've kind of fleshed that game, but defense has as well. But can you kind of just take us into what that locker room was like in terms of, 1, how you guys played, and 2, I guess what you guys thinking, like, all right, to be great, we need to work on fill in the blank there.
Yeah, I think just going into it, first game as a Giant, really felt a good energy in the locker room and the team. So that was great going into the game. I had a good game plan. Throughout the game, I think there was a couple things that we could have did a little bit better. I think we did a lot of things really good, and when we looked at the tape, we're really happy with those things. So I think there's some couple things that we want to clean up, and I think that'll make the difference moving into next week.
Can you detail that a little bit in terms of, and let's go both sides of it. Yeah. Things y'all did good, kind of detail that, and then things that, I mean, every team needs to clean something up, so we don't need to be shy about anything. So the good and the cleanup.
Yeah, I think it's just collectively working together, offense, defense, special teams. There was a couple things in all those different areas early on that maybe try to get better field positioners, things like that. So I think as we're moving into the second week, we'll try to clean some of those things up.
You personally had a pretty solid PFF grade. I think they targeted Terry McLaurin 4 times. He only had 2 catches, about 20-something yards. Just that matchup, how do you feel you did in that matchup?
Yeah, I think overall it was okay. I think there was one ball that, he kind of threw over my head, and he kind of had to step on me. So that was something that, I looked at. I said, okay, I got to get better there. I think overall it was good, challenging them all game. And I think Flott on the other side had a great game as well, challenging the receivers. And then when Tay came in, he did a good job. So I think overall the corners were pretty good and sticky. But there was a couple plays of maybe some yardage that routes maybe we didn't want to give up as deep. But I think overall it was some good things to build on as we move into week 2.
When you go from a Terry McLaurin and a Paulson Adebo, now you have George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. Does the mindset kind of change, or do you have to tailor your approach to the week in terms of your practice habits, your eyes, the way you watch film? Like, what's that like going from that room of receivers to now the Cowboys room?
Yeah, I think every receiving group, regardless of if they have the names or not, they have guys that can hurt you, that have speed, that have the ability to catch the ball. So you prepare and you give everybody their respect, and you're going up against a good receiving group like the Cowboys have. There's a couple things that maybe you want to key on, look at exactly how they run their routes, exactly how they do things, whether they're in press or if they're in off coverage. But going up against a good group, that'll be a good challenge this week.
I know you guys are waiting to bust out the turnover chest. So who gets that first turnover this week?
We got to wait and see. I think we got a bunch of dogs on defense, right? You got Bobby, who's ready to punch the ball out. I'm ready to get a pick. Drew, New, Jay, Holland, Flott. He almost had one last week. So I think we're all itching to get into that too.
All right, man. Good luck this week.
Yeah, appreciate you.
Cor'Dale Flott, we're heading down to you're heading down to Dallas this week. You got two really good wide receivers that you're going to be going up against in George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb. But before we get into that, let's flush week one away. Just obviously overall thoughts of the defense and how you played that Washington Commanders game.
I feel like I played well. I feel like as a defense, we fought. We fought adversity. So I like to see the composure from us as guys, and us coming in this locker room now, we flushed it, we putting it behind us, we're working hard, and, we still got that confidence. So.
Before we officially flush it, what's one thing that you guys identified as a defense that you need to get better at going into week two?
More so just, our focus, our intent, our approach to the game and mentality when we practicing out here, sharpening our skills, sharpening our, camaraderie too. So that's what we need to get better at.
All right, that's flush going into week two. You got George Pickens, CeeDee Lamb, two of some of the top receivers in this league, I guess. One, how excited are you to have a matchup regardless of who comes over to your side? And two, just defensively, how do you guys slow down and stop that Cowboys offense?
Yeah, it's going to be fun to compete. They got two good receivers, so we're going to have to go out there, execute, play our game. We're going to make plays, they're going to make plays, and we're going to see how it goes.
You can curse, man. Would you say PG-13?
Yeah, I don't know.
Game on the line, 4th and goal. You guys got to make a stop. Which receiver would you want to come to your side, Pickens or CeeDee Lamb?
Either or.
I like it. You see, I try to get you with one of those questions.
Yeah, I know. It's all good.
But overall, watching that tape, man, just like how good could this defense be this year? Now that you guys have had a game in front of you, you know what you need to clean up. Where's the ceiling for this defense?
The ceiling high, man. It's past the stars. So, we got to keep believing that too. We got to keep going out there with that confidence and execute.
Still either or?
Either or.
Still either or.
Yeah.
All right, my man. Appreciate you. Still waiting to see who's going to force that first turnover and bring out the turnover chest. I was hoping that we got to see it down in the nation's capital. But, Paulson really feels like defense is going to have a better week this week. And like we said, all starts with stopping the run. So you could put Dak in some 3rd and long situations. But I like what he did week one. Hopefully that kind of carries over to week two. Paul, talking about passing it. It's time for Pass It to Paul. Your final thoughts heading into week two, sir?
Well, look, last week they played a team that won 14 games last year. The Commanders won 12 games in the regular season and 2 more in the playoffs. That was not a fair fight, and it didn't look like a fair fight. It was just disturbing that the Giants couldn't score a touchdown, for the 3rd time in 3 consecutive season openers, which is, not what you want, obviously. This week, they're going against the Cowboy team that is 0-1. And the Cowboys don't want to be 0-2, but no one looked at the Cowboys here and said, man, they're an NFC powerhouse. They're one of the best teams in the NFC. Most people picked them for 3rd place in the NFC East, right? The Giants, who were in last place in the NFC East, cannot compete and perhaps win a game against the 3rd place team. It's a problem. Jackson Dart, I don't think he plays this week. But Russell Wilson's got to get in the end zone. That's all there is to it. If they're down 13-0 at halftime, does Brian Daboll make a switch? I don't think so. But at this point, I think it's all systems go. I'm not going to discount anything with the quarterback situation because I don't think they can. I don't think they're going to say, okay, we'll wait till we're 0-3 or 0-4 or 0-5, and then they'll put the kid in. Brian Daboll told you what he thinks of Jackson Dart by making him the backup quarterback. That means he's one play away. That means he's one play away from being on the field, and that means they have to trust him. So the Giants do not want it to come to that. They need to play a cleaner game. Russell Wilson, they'd like him to be the starting quarterback, for the foreseeable future, for at least a month or two, maybe. So, this is going to be a real week 2 gut check, gut punch to see if the Giants can. First of all, they have to score touchdowns and they have to compete. But that's not going to do a whole hell of a lot if they're 0-2, okay? Knowing what comes next, Chiefs, Chargers. So it's not a must-win. It's week 2. No one thinks the Giants are any good anyway, but it's a big pressure tank now, right? And it's busting to burst. And if they can win a game, a lot of that air comes out of that pressure tank and everyone settles down. We'll see if they can do it. It's the signs were not good last week. We'll see they can do it because the pressure's just going to build and build and build on everybody if they don't win a game here.
Yeah, it's like you're watching the game, ready to check off a couple like checkpoints and milestones. First touchdown, boom. First turnover, boom. Abdul Carter, first sack. There we go. Malik Neighbors, first touchdown reception of the season. Boom, first win. Bam. All could be right for another week here in Giants land. Paul, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this thing up, man, so we can get out of here. Thank you guys for watching another episode of Blue Rush. Make sure you check out the post-game live show. Give New York Post Sports a follow. Stay updated with anything and everything New York Football Giants. For Paul Schwartz, I'm Brandon London. Thanks for watching Blue Rush.